Hello everyone. In today's session, we are going to understand introduction to MongoDB. So basically, what is MongoDB? Let's try to understand. So MongoDB is a NoSQL database. So how we have different databases in the market like Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server. In the same way, MongoDB is also a database. And we know that database are of different types. In that, MongoDB is a NoSQL database. Now, what is the meaning of NoSQL database? It means MongoDB does not uses table, rows, and columns concept to store the data. So it does not use tables, rows, and columns like traditional US SQL databases. Now, you might have worked with traditional databases like Oracle or MySQL, and you might have observed there whenever we are want to store any kind of data in MySQL or Oracle database, we store the data in the table format. But when it comes to MongoDB, here we don't use any kind of table concept. That is the reason it comes under NoSQL database. Then how we store the data? So in MongoDB, we store the data in JSON-like structure called BSON. So there is a format of storing the data in the MongoDB called BSON. BSON stands for binary JSON. It is very similar to JSON format. So JSON format is nothing but object format. So in simple words, I can say that in MongoDB database, we can store the data in object format, or we store the data in object format. MongoDB makes very flexible and easier to store the complex or any data which is dynamic. So MongoDB database will help us to store a flexible and easier and complex data. So that is the main advantage of this MongoDB database. Now let's understand key characteristics of MongoDB database. Key characteristics of MongoDB database. MongoDB is non-relational database. As we discussed, MongoDB comes under NoSQL database. NoSQL is nothing but it is a non-relational database that stores data in flexible document format instead of tables. So already we discussed this part. As I have said, in MongoDB database, we store the data in a object format. And that object format in MongoDB terms, we are going to call as a document format. That is the reason here I have added MongoDB is a non-relational database that stores data in flexible document format. Document format is nothing but object format instead of tables. Data is stored as a JSON-like document within collection. So here in MongoDB database, we have a concept of collection. Collection is like a container where we are going to store all our documents, nothing but objects. So here we are going to store the data in JSON-like document within the collection. MongoDB allows dynamic, flexible data structure without a fixed schema. So whenever we want to store any kind of data in our MongoDB database, we need not to follow any kind of fixed schema. For example, if you are storing the data in your uh, relational database, there you have to create first a table. You have to define number of columns in that table, and then only you can store the data. And whatever columns you have defined, every part of data should follow that columns. Now, in your relational database, you cannot have one row having 5 columns, another row having 3 columns, another row having 7 columns. So this kind of unstructured way, we cannot store the data. But in MongoDB, we have that flexibility. In MongoDB, we are storing the data in object format. So now I can store 3 objects. Now in these three objects, I can have different number of properties. So first object can have 4 properties, another object can have 10 properties, another object can have only single property. So like this, I have a flexibility to store the data without following any kind of fixed structure. MongoDB provides us fast way to read and write operation on large data sets. So if you are storing a large amount of data in the MongoDB database, now MongoDB will allow us to access the data at faster rate. And even if you want to store the data in MongoDB, it allows us to store the data in very faster rate. That is the meaning of provides fast and read operations for larger data sets. And MongoDB supports horizontal scaling through sharding concept for handling big data. So if you have a requirement where your data is going to increase a day by day, then MongoDB helps us to uh, what we can say, it will help us to increase our database in horizontal scaling way. So instead of adding the existing database multiple resources, we can increase the number of databases. That is what horizontal scaling is all about. So it supports horizontal scaling instead of vertical scaling. So these are the some of the key characteristics of MongoDB database, why we want to use. So remaining things about MongoDB, we will see in the next video. So thank you guys for watching this video.